Hello, and welcome to a Fortnight on the Isle, where in the weeks that were, I have developed tinnitus. That's the news for this week in my personal life. I've actually developed a little bit of tinnitus ringing in my left ear particularly, which is rather unfortunate. Ironic as well, considering that just a few weeks ago I decided to start turning everything down, all of my volumes and stuff, specifically to avoid this problem, but I've developed it nonetheless, so that's unfortunate. I've also been rather lazy over the last couple of weeks, aside from, I guess, the last few days. I've been doing a lot of work on video stuff as the new year has happened, because I kind of have to do that with the new year based off of my video schedule. But otherwise, I have been rather lazy the last couple weeks. Here's to a fortnight where Mother Nature also spites me by snowing way too much as well, because there's basically been no snow up to this point, which is highly abnormal. And the forecast is showing a lot of snow for the next week. So that's not very exciting, but that's probably not what you guys are here for. Let's talk about what I read over the last couple of weeks, starting off, first of all, with finishing Return to Adan, the third book in the Adan trilogy by Philip Chase. I really enjoyed this book. I've talked about it at length by this point on, I believe, two videos that were published on the video or on the channel already. First off, last Tuesday, my monthly reading wrap up in TBR, I talked about this. It was my book of the month for December. I also talked about this in my top 10 books of the year video last Thursday. So I have talked about this one quite a bit. If you want to know more detailed about how much I really enjoyed this book, you can check out those other couple of videos. Otherwise, I'll just leave it at I really enjoyed Return to Adan, and it was super worth returning to and finishing this trilogy, even when I was slightly underwhelmed by Prophet of Adan, and really, really, really liked The Way of Adan earlier this year. Next up, I did not just start, but I also completely read a book. This does not happen very often where I start and finish a book in one fortnightly period. All the Pretty Horses, first book in the Border trilogy by Cormac McCarthy. This one, I would say I wasn't quite as hooked or generally enthused by as No Country for Old Men, for example, but I did enjoy the book a decent bit because I was invested in the characters enough, their interactions, and the general plot of the story dealing with those interactions and the kind of technical drama that unfolds as such was enjoyable to read, compared to, say, The Road, where I did not connect with the characters at all and thought that the dialogue between them was terrible, and because there wasn't really a plot outside of just what the characters are doing in any given moment, that book didn't work for me. This book wasn't my favorite McCarthy book. It's sitting right in between The Road and No Country for Old Men for me. My final thoughts on this thing won't be ultimately decided, though, until I continue with the trilogy, which I will be doing. The Crossing will be in February, so it'll be a few weeks probably before I start that one. But I did do a review of this on Goodreads that I don't actually think articulated why I was mixed on it too well, but I definitely tried. But I was relatively mixed on it compared to, say, the other two, where I was very solidly on one side or the other. Next up, I did continue Anna Karenina. Not only did I finish part 2 over the last couple of weeks, but I got a decent chunk through part 3. I'm like 37% of the way through the book now. I have only like 35 pages left in book or in part 3, and then I'm pretty confident I'll be through part 4, if not even further by the end of the month. We'll kind of see how things go with future reading plans, especially once we get into the next update. I'll, have something to talk about there. But I've been really enjoying Anna Karenina. It hasn't been as gripping as War and Peace was, but the drama is still entertaining and enjoyable to read, even if some of it is a little bit like, this is a weird thing to be reading about and also be enjoying, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless, especially like the farm stuff with Levin is really kind of strange as an inclusion to the book that is still good, all things considered. But beyond those two, I'm just going to give quick updates. I have now finally started reading some short stories, as I thought I would start doing in early 2023, but did not. So for Edgar Allan Poe, I did read the first short story, Metzengerstein, which I found to be a surprisingly deep and literary story for being the first one of his that was ever published. It just means that I'm more confident in being able to do short story Sundays now on the channel, which I'm actually quite confident I'll be able to start releasing videos for that, like starting next week. So on Sundays that Fortnight on the Isle doesn't come out. Starting off with Metzengerstein, because that one has a surprising amount to interpret and analyze within it. I also did read H.P. Lovecraft's, I believe it's his first story that he wrote. It might just be the first one that was published. The Beast in the Cave, which was apparently written when he was 15 years old. And I thought the story was rather good. The last couple paragraphs did kind of ruin a little bit of the mysterious factor to the story, which I was a little bit, I was a little bit mixed on that for ending the story that way. It would have been better if you just kind of left those last couple paragraphs out. But the prose of the story, especially since a lot of people I know like to call Lovecraft's prose rather boring for the most part. If this story is indicative of his prose overall, I'm not going to have a problem with that. I actually really enjoyed the actual reading process of The Beast in the Cave quite a bit. So those two stories, Metzengerstein and Beast in the Cave, will be the first two stories to be featured on Short Story Sundays. So probably man, how many Sundays are there even in this month? Yeah, so I guess on the 14th, because today's the 7th, so next week I'll probably do Metzengerstein, and then on the last Sunday of the month, on the 28th, will probably be The Beast in the Cave. So that's rather exciting to have new content to be able to cover, and to be able to do so in such relatively short time period. I'm not having to spend hours upon hours reading full books and then just reviewing them. I can spend, an hour or less reading a short story and spend a little bit of time afterwards, like ruminating on it and analyzing it and thinking about it, so that I can do a better version of a review for it, a short review for it later as well. So we're just gonna kind of explore how that's gonna go. But for the time being, let's talk about right now the bi-weekly writing. Let's just say I only got a few more scenes into part 3 of Ballad of the Birds, so I definitely did not finish that outline by the end of the year like I anticipated that I would, and that I know that I could have. But like I said, I've been really lazy the last couple weeks with holiday season and being off from work a lot and just kind of doing nothing productive. So I didn't really do a whole lot of work with the Reign of Ash, but I do plan to get a little bit more into that now as I'm getting back into the work mood as well. The progress that I did make was pretty good, but I cannot describe how nervously excited I am to be getting into the last book of that trilogy with the outlines as well. So I'm kind of looking forward to it with anticipation, but also a little bit of nervousness as well. Let's talk about the coming releases and actually, put these things right here. Let's talk now about the coming releases for this fortnight. First off, on the 9th will be my December/Christmas 2023 book haul, wrapping up all the latest acquisitions, not just for my shelves, but for all of 2023 in general. That one was a fun one to put together. I'm looking forward to how I can manage to squeeze all of these books onto my shelves, because I'm actually now running out of shelf space again, and this time I can't actually really expand that very much. So 2024 is looking rather nerve-wracking on that front. This Thursday on the 11th will be the first part of my 2023 reading tier list series, covering the first 10 or 11 books that I read in 2023 and putting them in a tier list. I did the same sort of thing a year ago, did 5 of those for all of my 2022 reading. So if you want a little bit of idea how that's going to go, you can either wait until that video releases on Thursday, or you can go back and watch all of those ones as well, since those videos still apply. On the 14th, next Sunday, just as I mentioned, I'll probably do my first Short Story Sundays video on Metzengerstein by Edgar Allan Poe. And I'm sorry if I've been butchering the name of that story this entire time. That is entirely on me for being very uncultured and incapable of pronouncing anything correctly, including in my own language. Next Tuesday on the 16th will be my 2024 general TBR, so kind of the basic idea of what I want to get through over the year. I actually kind of teased at this a little bit earlier in the video unintentionally, because I mentioned that last year I did a general TBR video, and in that I said I wanted to read 1 to 2 short stories from each of these authors, Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft, every month, and I ultimately did not do that. I got to read all of Poe's poetry last year, but I did not do any of the short stories yet, so that I'm doing this year. That is something that will be included in that general TBR video, but I also go over some other reading plans and kind of how I expect to move forward with some of the series that I'm in, and what I want to do with standalones and the whatnot. But otherwise, next Thursday on the 18th will be the second part of the 2023 reading tier list. All those will go through February 1st each Thursday. Each new part will come out. On the second channel, nothing really exciting to announce. I still have to put together my blogs for my top games and albums and everything up 2023. And because I have to do that, I have not put forward anything for writing yet. So I won't have, audio tracks for those blogs out until probably February, I would guess. So over the next couple weeks, on the 12th and the 19th will be the episodes 2 and 3 of my 2020 backlog Let's Plays for BioShock. I believe there's only like 10 or 12 episodes in that series, and after that is done, all of the 2020 backlog is done. BioShock was one of the ones, I believe that was the first, and I guess at this point, only Let's Play that I did back in 2020 with Facecam, so that one is a little bit more interesting to actually watch than I believe the other Let's Plays were. As for entertainment talk, I've mentioned it multiple times up to this point already. Instead of writing, I have been gaming. I made the mistake of starting Far Cry 6 a couple weeks ago. I believe it was like the day after I recorded the last one of these Fortnights on the Isle. I just decided to boot up Far Cry 6 because for some reason I just wanted to play a shooter that was not like COD or something like that. So that's what I did, and honestly, I've really enjoyed it for the most part. I did, the starting area was pretty great. I went to a different area than the game actually suggests you go to starting off after that, and I really enjoyed that area. The area that the game actually suggests you start off with, I went to next, and I didn't really enjoy that as much. I'm now in the last major area before you actually get to the finale of the game, but overall, have mostly been enjoying it. I'm about 75 hours in, and I'm like somewhere between 55 and 60% done. But I have been enjoying my time with it generally because the gameplay loop is also more enjoyable than, say, like Assassin's Creed Odyssey was when I played that a few years back. Being both the Ubisoft collectathons that are too big with worlds that just are too big. But I've had fun. I think the first-person shooter gameplay loop for this kind of thing has been more enjoyable for me generally. And additionally, the writing and the story and quest design for the game has largely been good, surprisingly enough, considering that Far Cry 6 is amongst the bottom of Far Cry rankings. If you go and read a bunch of articles ranking those games, the spin-offs are the ones that are generally at the very bottom. Far Cry 1 is generally closer to the bottom, but joining those spin-offs in Far Cry 1, the 6th game is usually down there, but people who cite Far Cry 6 as their first or one of their first Far Cry games usually have it ranked higher, so that's part of why I decided to play this one before, like, 3, for example, the fan favorite. Honestly, just had a great time, but I'll go ahead and leave the Far Cry 6 talks there, and mention that Josh and I finally hopped back onto Remnant 2. We didn't record any of what we played over the last couple weeks because we were just collecting all but one of the remaining archetypes, so those are basically the classes of that game, but we'll be spending a while leveling those archetypes and gathering other random items, preparing some builds ahead of doing actual run on the next difficulty at some point. So nothing that I would put up on the channel. In fact, I still need to finish putting up the Remnant 1 Let's Play that we did, and then actually put up the Remnant 2, the first run that we did together for that. That will probably happen this year. We'll see. I would like for it to happen this year. I would like to have at least one video coming out on the second channel every week. Again, we'll kind of see how that goes, but I realized jumping back into that game with Josh the last couple weeks that I really love Remnant 2, and I love that gameplay loop. I think it is super satisfying and super enjoyable. As for the music talk, this is going to be a really short section because there was only, I believe, one single that released over the last couple weeks that I thought was notable to include. Since it is Friday when I'm recording this, I'm just going to double check and make sure there wasn't anything else to include. I guess Bring Me the Horizon released a new single called Kool-Aid that everybody's freaking out about. I haven't listened to it, so I can't recommend it yet. Same thing with Andromeda, that instrumental artist that I talked about a couple weeks ago, released a new single, both with vocals and instrumental. Haven't listened to that yet. But Glass Crown, one of my favorite artists, released a new single called Shallow, and that one's really good. It's like 5 minutes long and a little bit of a different general stylistic trend than most of their past material that I thought was pretty neat. But that is all I've got for you in this update. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be back on Tuesday with the book haul, Thursday with the start of the reading tier list for 2023, and then next Sunday with my first short story Sunday. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you're excited for all the new stuff coming out. I certainly am. I'll see you guys in the next video.